What happens in a stock split is the corporation will change the number of outstanding stocks, but they keep the total value the same. So let's say there are 10,000 stocks outstanding, and they're worth $4 each. They will do a stock split maybe and make it 20,000 shares for $2 each.
So that more people can buy them.
Well, it's also, it'll do, if shares are low, like the price is really low, they'll do a stock split where maybe they have 20,000 and they turn it into 10,000. So your 2 shares become 1 for double the value. So then if somebody hasn't been tracking that really closely, they don't see that the split, which is actually not a split but a pasting together, but it's still called a split, artificially inflates the value of the stock. So then the corporation looks like it's doing better. Or a corporations will hold on to certain amounts of stock for themselves. So they might split it to make it more shares that are cost less money, so they have more shares to sell.
Yeah.
So like if they have 5,000 shares in-house, they can turn it into 10,000 shares, sell 5,000 of them, they're still holding on to 5,000.
So they still have a certain percentage of the business.
The percentage would change actually, because
It would be smaller.
it
Because you have more stocks.
it would be smaller because they have more number, but they could still hold the same number of stocks, but then they could sell more of them. So there's a lot of different reasons that they will do this. But what happens is the number changes, but the total value stays the same. And so if this happened and there were 10,000 shares outstanding and there were $4,000 each, and I had 50 shares for $4 each, I would now have 100 shares for $2 each on this particular example. Okay, so outstanding shares, that's just the number of shares issued to investors. What? Why are you doing this? Okay.
Outstanding just means available.
Available for purchase.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just the number of shares that are available for purchase. And then the market capitalization, also called the market cap, is the total value of all outstanding shares. So if you hear that term or if you see that term on any of the stock pages when you're looking at them, that's what that means. It's the total value of that company's shares of stock altogether. Okay, so a traditional stock split. In a traditional stock split, the number of shares goes up and the value of each, value is with a U, not a W, goes down. Okay, and the market cap stays the same. All right. They call this a 4B split. Okay, so A for B split. So 2, 4, 1. So that means for each share you had, 1 share becomes 2.
The value.
And the value becomes half of it, like half the value of each.
Yeah.
The total value
Is the same.
Yeah. Again. Okay, the reverse stock split is the opposite. The number of shares goes down and the value of each goes up. Okay, the market cap still stays the same. And it is still an A for B situation. You know, they still call it A for B, but maybe it might be 1 for 2. So every 2 stocks you had are now 1. So 2 become 1. This happens a lot with penny stocks, and penny stocks are stocks that are worth less than $5 a share. So they're not actually a penny, but they're called penny stocks. So John Deere Corporation, this is it's a real company. They make lawnmowers and other lawn and garden equipment, edgers and trimmers and all that stuff. Instituted a 2-for-1 stock split. Before the split, the market share price was $87.68 per share, and the corporation had 1.2 billion shares outstanding. Okay, so how are we going to do this? First of all, I want to turn this into a number that I can work with. Okay, so 1.2 billion is 1,200,000,000. Okay. The pre-split market cap was $87.68 per share, so I have to multiply that times that. Okay. Now, because I am just that brilliant, I'm going to go ahead and do this in my head. Kidding. So the value of the John Deere stock was $105 billion. Well, $105,216,000,000. Okay, this is the market cap. Pre-split. Okay, this is the post-split number of shares. Okay, so we had it's a 2-for-1 split. Okay. Okay, so 2 for 1. This is how many you have. This is how many you're going to get. Right? If you had 1, you now have 2. So if your original is 1 and I'm now going to have 2, that means I need to multiply the number of shares times 2, right? So I'm going to take that 1.2 billion and I'm going to multiply that by 2, and I'm going to get 2.4 billion. Now, the reason I could do this without having to write out all the zeros is because I'm multiplying by a small number, 2, 3, 4. The reason I had to put all the zeros in before was because I was multiplying by, 87.68, which has decimals, and so you have to be able to account for that, but this is fine. So now there are 2.4 billion shares post-split. Okay. So now we have, I don't know why I put that in there twice. Ignore that part, because we just answered that right there. Okay, what is the post-split market price per share? So we have 2 for 1, right? This is the original. It was 87.68. That's now going to become 2 shares of stock, but they're going to have the same value. So I need to divide that by 2. Does that make sense? Okay, so I do 87.68 divided by 2 is 43.84 each. And did the market cap change? Well, we could check that. I can say 2.4 billion times 43.84, and I get 105,216,000,000. So there is no change. They don't always come out nicely. They don't always do a 2 for 1 or a 3 for 1 or a 1 for 4. Sometimes they do a 2 for 3 or a 5 for 8 or something. They do whatever number they decided. They can do any numbers. So when that happens, there's kind of a formula you can use. A for B split, you're going to do for the number of shares, A over B times the pre-split number of shares. Okay, so the first number divided by the second number times the number of stocks you had. For the post-split share price, it's the opposite. It's B over A times the pre-split price. Okay. So what we have, if we have a 1 for 20, reverse stock split. 1 is A, 20 is B. It's always A, B. Even if the bigger number's out front, it's still always A, B. Okay. So my market price is 64 cents, and my shares are 580 million. So my post-split number I'm going to do A over B times 580 million. Okay, basically this is 580 million divided by 20, right? So, or you can do 1 divided by 20 and get the decimal and then multiply it by 580 million. Either way is fine, just so long as you get to 29 million. So the other way you can write this is 580 divided by 20 because of a 1 to 20. If there was a 2 or 3 or something up here, that would change. Okay. My post-split value per share is going to be 20 over 1. Oops, not 580 million. Huh? That's funny. Times 64 cents. So this is 20 times 64 cents. So now those 64-cent stocks are worth $12.80. That looks much more appealing than 64 cents if you're talking about buying stocks. Also, if you aren't quite up on like looking at the corporate news that goes along with the shares of stocks, the price is going to show, what is that, like an $11 or $12.16 increase from yesterday. So it's going to show like this giant increase, and people are going to, wow, that's doing great, I need to buy that. But it was artificially inflated. Go the other way too. Before stock split, a share was $2.35, and after the stock split, it's suddenly $7.05. And we want to know what is the ratio there, so you can figure out maybe how many shares are what. So what we can do, if we look at this formula, our post-split price is equal to B over A times the pre-split price, right? So come here and we'll say post-split okay. Now, at this point, unless it is otherwise told to you, A or B will equal 1. Unless you're just going to assume it's a 1 for something or a something for 1. Now, it's a reverse split because the price went up. Do you see that? So the price went up, so it's a reverse split. So it's going to be a 1 for question.
Oh, okay.
Right? Because with a reverse split, you have a bunch of stocks become 1. For a traditional split, you have one stock becomes more. Does that make sense? So if the value of the per share went up, B is going to be the number that's not 1. And if the value per share went down, A will be the not 1.
So at this point, you would just divide the post by
Well,
by the post.
I'm just going to put it all in here so that, yeah, so, and then times 235. Yeah, so which is just B.
Dividing 2.35 or 7.05 by 2.35.
And so 3. So this was a 1 for 3 split. Okay, I just want you guys to get used to this kind of formula because when, again, in a second, I'm going to show you a not even split, and that will come in handy. This comes in handy a lot. Fractional part of the sale occurs if it's not an even split and the split creates a remainder, so less than 1 share. Now that can occur on like a 2 for 1 split. No, a 1 for, it can occur on a 1 for 2 split because you're taking 2 and you're turning it into 1. Well, if I owned 7 and 2 become 1, I now have 3.5. But you can't have a half of a share of stock. You can't have a quarter of a share of stock. You can only have whole shares. So when that happens, the corporations buy the pieces, the little decimal parts, the fractional parts, at the current market value. So if the current market value was $10 and I have technically a half of a share, they're going to give me $5 and buy that half of a share off of me. Because, again, I can't really own half of a share of stock. They send you a check.
Just send you a check for it right there. Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's what happens is,
Random.
yeah, they'll send you a check. Well, it's not random because before they do a stock split, stockholders are notified of how it's going to change everything. So you'll get like a letter.
Hey, you're going to get this check.
Yeah, so they're saying, okay, you own blah number of shares at this value. We're doing this stock split, so now you'll own this number of shares at this value, but you have this fractional part, which is worth this much, and then they send you a check. Yeah. So Steve owns 942 shares of Graham Corporation, and they did a 5 for 4 split. The stock is selling at $56 per share before the split. Okay, so we've got a 5 for 4. So that's A, that's B. Okay, and we want to know how Steve's affected. So we're going to figure out pretty much everything at this point. Okay, the post-split number. That is A over B times pre-split number, right? Okay, so that's going to be 5 over 4 times 942. Okay, so 5 divided by 4. I personally do this with fractions, but that's 1.25. But I feel like you guys probably like decimals a little better than fractions.
And we're looking for the post-split number?
Yeah. Because we're saying how he was affected, so we do everything.
Mhm.
So he gets 1,177 and a half shares. Huh? Okay, we'll come back to that. The post-split money is 4/5 because it's B over A times $56. 4 divided by 5 is 0.8. And I multiply that times $56, and the new shares are $44.80 each. Okay, now this is bothersome. Half a share, you can't have half a share. So what happens is Steve keeps shares, okay?
And receives a check for half of.
Graham buys the 0.5 at $22.40.
Okay.
So Steve keeps $11.77 or $11, 1,177 shares and gets $22.40. His total value stays the same because of this 2240. So he has his shares and the 2240 add up to keep the same value that he had originally.
Even though he can't really.
Well, that he has the shares and he has a check.
Yeah.
So his money is the same. It's just that one of them's fluid and one of them's, yeah. So he didn't lose any money on the deal. Now he can take that 2240 and reinvest it if he wants to, or he can go spend it, or whatever. It's his money.